I've come to speak today about a topic that is so important because of all the stress and all the challenges that each of us face. Every single one of us is challenged in certain ways. And when you come to a gathering like this and you see so many people and you might think, wow, that person has everything. That's only because you don't know what's going on in their lives. Everybody's got something, whether family, children problems, parnasa problems, health problems. It's always something. That's what Golus is all about. We may be living in Eretz Yisrael, but we're still in Golus till Mashiach comes. So the question is, how do we cope every day? And how can we become happy and content people? So I want to tell you something amazing. Rav Shimon Schwab once told me, we all know the Gemara, Meshenichnas Adar, Marben Besimcha. When Adar comes, we increase the Simcha. But do you know that the Medrash tells us that, not the Medrash, the Gemara, the same Mishnah tells us, Meshenichnas Av, when the month of Av comes, Mematin Besimcha, we minimize our Simcha. So Rav Schwab pointed out, it doesn't say that there's no Simcha in Av, even though that we remember the destruction of both Batei Migdash, but Meshenichnas Adar Marbim, we increase. Meshenichnas Adar Mematin, we minimize our Simcha. But a Yid always has to be Besimcha. A Yid always has to find something that should make them happy. And he gave me a wonderful mashal, and I'm happy to see that everybody here is over 20 years old, because if you're under 20, you won't know the example, what he told me, and that's a pilot light. You tell a kid today about a pilot light, they think that's the light that the pilot turns on the plane, right? But we know that the pilot light is that light that was on the oven. It was always on. When you cooked, it was elevated. And when you didn't cook, it was minimized, but it was always on. And he said, just like the pilot light always has to be on, the element of simcha always has to be on. And you know, many times when I speak about marriage, I tell people this Gemara, a fascinating Gemara. The Gemara tells us in Tainis that Eliyahu Hanavi was once walking with Rav Broika. And this is the Gemara in Tainis, Chav Beis Amud Aleph, for those of you taking notes. And the Gemara says, Eliyahu Hanavi said to Rav Broika, you see these two people coming here? They have a straight ticket to Olam Haba. And he was wondering, who are these people? Such great tzaddikim? I didn't know they're such great tzaddikim. So after Eliyahu Hanavi left, and I'm so amazed that the Gemara says that Rav Broika waited till Eliyahu Hanavi left. In other words, if you're walking with an important person, you don't start a conversation with somebody else. It's not derech eretz. So he waited till Eliyahu Hanavi left, and he goes over to these people and he says, Maya Viditaicha, what do you guys do? I heard that you're going straight to Olam Haba. You must be so special. You listen what they said. They said, Inchi bedichi anan, we are happy people. Mibadchinon atzivi. We make those that are unhappy, we make them happy. Wow, that's an amazing thing. That if you could make people that are depressed, you could make them happy, you have that capacity, you have that smile, you have that words of chizuk, you're going straight to Olam Haba. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you an amazing thing. Those of you who daven shachris in the morning, there's a certain phrase that I have underlined in my siddur. And think about it for a second. In the Halalukas, let's see, I'm going to tell you 3 words, and let's see who could think of the first letters of those 3 words. What word could you make from them? Haroifei l'shavurei leiv. Hallel, right. Haroifei l'shavurei leiv, we say about Hashem, that He heals the brokenhearted. Hasidic Rebbe said, that's Hallel. That's the biggest praise. If you're that type of person who walks into a room and you make people feel good about themselves, that's Hallel. That's Haroifei l'shavurei leiv. But you know what the Ma'am Loyes tells us? A fabulous lesson. He said, let's listen carefully to what they said. He asked them, what do you guys do? They didn't just answer, we make people happy. They added something. There was a caveat. They said, Inchi bedichi anan, we are happy people. We make others happy. Why did they say that? So the Ma'amloyes in Dvarim Kof Ches Mem Zayin says, V'zeh she'omru onu semeichim, that which they said they are happy, umesamchim acherim, and they make others happy, comes to teach us. Shem adam roitze l'sameach acherim. You want to make others happy. You want to make your spouse happy. You want to make your kids happy. You want to make your co-workers happy. You have to be happy. If they would be negative, depressed people, even if they wanted to make somebody else happy, they wouldn't be able to do it. So, in other words, you want to know how come your spouse is not so happy? Or how come your kids are not so happy? Or your co-workers are not so happy? You know what you should do? Look in the mirror. And then you'll see, oh my gosh, maybe it's because of me. Because if you're negative and you're always complaining and you're always looking for what's wrong, not what's right, there's no way you can make anybody happy. So we must learn today how to be happy people, because we want everybody around us to be happy as well. So therefore, we have to learn how to be happy. And I'll tell you an amazing thing about marriage. Every time I speak about marriage, I tell over this story. I have a friend who's a marriage counselor. I don't know why all my friends are therapists and marriage counselors, but whatever. There must be something with me. But whatever it is, he once told me, you know what the 3 most important words in marriage are? Not the 3 you're thinking about. The 3 most important words are, I am wrong. Now, is that all right? I am wrong. So I was so amazed by that. So a few weeks later, I had to speak about marriage. And I said at the speech, I said, you know, my friend Dr. Meir Wickler told me the 3 most important words in marriage are, I was wrong. And everybody's nodding their heads, the men, the women, everybody's absorbing it. Then I go out for lunch, you know, and I'm in the hallway, and I hear some guy go over to his wife and said, you hear what the rabbi said? You were wrong. He really learned that lesson, right, didn't he? So we have to know that it's up to us, not to the spouse. You know, many times we always find blame by other people. But again, look at yourself, look into your own heart. And let's see. So I'll tell you, I think one of the ways to become a happy person is to begin looking at stories of Hashgacha Pratis. Now, when you see stories of Hashgacha Pratis, that means Hashem orchestrated something so perfectly, so exact. You begin to realize, oh, there's a God in this world, and He's taking care. Every little thing that happens only because He wants it. So therefore, there's got to be a reason. Nothing happens haphazard. I just have to understand why. But it's not just Stam Hefker. So you see that there's a whole orchestration in the world. And I'll give you an example. In my neighborhood where I live in Kew Gardens, New York, this past Purim and the days before Purim, there was a terrible snowstorm. And people couldn't get around to give Shalach Manas well because, you know, the sanitation wasn't picked up, the snow plowing wasn't done. It was a tremendous storm. So for 2 or 3 days, they didn't collect the sanitation. Now, 2 or 3 days after Purim, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and we have a yeshiva in our neighborhood called Yeshiva Sha'ar Torah. The Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Kalman Epstein, is a brilliant fellow. He's up at 2 o'clock in the morning, probably learning, and all of a sudden he hears the sanitation people outside. So his kitchen had a whole bunch of black bags, you know, filled with garbage. He runs outside and he gives it to one of the guys. He says, could you please take this? And the guy says, of course. And the guy says to him, excuse me, sir, are you a rabbi? That's not what he was expecting the sanitation guy should ask him. And he says, who are you? He says, my name is Theodore. He says, are you a rabbi? He says, yeah, I am. He says, Rabbi, I have a question. Can I ask you a question? And he's thinking, what kind of question could a sanitation guy have 2 o'clock in the morning? Right? What shiloh could he have? So he says to him, Rabbi, my mother died a few hours ago. And I know that she would have wanted to have a Jewish burial. But I'm not religious, and my brother and sister are not religious. My mother wasn't religious. And they want to cremate her. That means they want to burn her in ashes. And I know, even though my mother wasn't religious, but, you know, she lit candles Friday night. We didn't always keep kosher or the Sabbath, but she would want a Jewish, Rabbi, what should I do? I didn't even tell them that she died yet. So he said, he's very smart. He said, I'll tell you what to do. It's 2 o'clock in the morning right now. 9 o'clock in the morning, call the Jewish funeral home and tell them that your mother died. Tell them where the body is. They'll bring it over to the funeral home, arrange the funeral, and once everything is arranged, call your brother and sister and say, listen, Mom died, and the funeral is all set for 2 o'clock this afternoon. And once it's all set, you'll see they won't complain. That's exactly what he does. He calls the funeral home, they pick up the body. 1 o'clock, he calls Rabbi Epstein. He says, Rabbi, you're a genius. That's what happened. I arranged the whole thing. I called my brother and sister, and they're coming at 2 o'clock for the funeral. Thank you so much. So Rabbi Epstein says, you're very welcome. He says, no, Rabbi, please, I got to ask you one more thing. You're the only rabbi I know. You think maybe you could come speak at the funeral? He never even knew this lady. He didn't even know this lady existed till 2 o'clock in the morning. But he's a tzaddik, so he said yes. So I said, what'd you say at that funeral? Listen to what he said. He said, people reap in death what they sowed in life. Now this woman, she felt a closeness to God. She may not have been totally religious, but she lit the candles Friday night. So she had a connection to Judaism. So Hashem, God, orchestrated that she should merit, that she should have a Jewish burial. And then he left. He didn't stay for the Kvura. That was someplace else. And that was that. Then he told me the next day he had to be in Lakewood. And this guy lived in Suffolk County. For those of you who in New York know, that's way out in Long Island. And he traveled from Lakewood to Suffolk County, 160 miles, to go be Menachem Ovel, this guy, who he had never seen till the night before. And the guy wasn't sitting Shiva, but he didn't go to work. And he spent some time with him. He told me he tried to reach him a few times afterwards. He wanted to follow up. The guy never answered the call. Finally, 2 weeks later, again, he hears the sanitation people outside. Rabbi Kalman runs outside. He says, guys, where's Theodore? Is he here today? They say, who's Theodore? I said, what do you mean, who's Theodore? He was the guy who was here at 2 o'clock in the morning 2 weeks ago. Oh, they said, oh, he never comes here. He works in Suffolk County, which is 80 miles away from here. That night, we needed extra hands because the sanitation hadn't been complete. That's the only time he ever worked in the city in his life. He never came here before. Can you imagine that? Hashkocha? The Eibishter made it that he should come that night, Dafka, and Rab Kalman should have the sanitation bags in his kitchen, and through that Hashkocha Pratis, this lady had a Jewish burial. So I was crazy about that story. See, such Hashkocha, the Eibishter orchestrates so many different things. So I told it over in Camp Monk this summer. Now, my Rebbe, Reb David Cohen, is the Rav of that camp. And he's sitting and listening. I want to show you how an Adam Gadol thinks. He comes over to me afterwards. He says, okay, tell me, what's the muvan of that story? What's the essence of that story? I said, well, Rebbe, I think it's obvious, right? Hashgacha Pratis. He says, that's much more than that. Listen to what he said. He said, how did she make a connection to Hashem? Through fire. She lit the candles Friday night. Because she made a connection with fire, Hashem made sure that fire didn't harm her. Isn't that amazing? That's an Adam Gadol. I get the chills now, even as I tell it to you. It's amazing, right? Because the Eish just saw that she used fire to make that one connection. Hashem said, my Tochter, I'll protect you. I won't let you get burned. Just amazing. Now, here's another thing that's amazing. When you see Hashgacha Pratis. This guy, Chassidish guy from Lakewood, told me he works for Conve Room. And those of you from New York, America, know that Conve Room is a wonderful organization. If a baby, Chas v'shalom, was stuck in a car, or, the mother forgot and locked the kid in the car, or locked herself out of the house, or a father can't get into his car for whatever reason, they can come and help you. They never charge. It's a wonderful organization. So this guy from Conve Room told me a couple years ago, it was Friday afternoon before a 3-day yontif. A 3-day yontif means it was going to be Shabbos, and then Sunday and Monday was going to be Shavuos. It's an hour before yontif, and he gets a call. Could you please come and fix my flat tire? So he says, it's an hour before yontif. Where are you stuck? The Garden State, Route 9, where are you? And he says, no, the car's in my driveway. He says, come on, you got to be kidding, right? It's an hour before yontif. Why don't you leave the car there? I'll come after Yontif. He says, no, I'm on Hatzalah. I might need the car over Yontif. The Conve Room guy told me he felt like 2 cents. Oh, how could he accuse this guy of calling him so unnecessarily? He's right. A guy who is on Hatzalah has to have a car that's, available 24/7, mamish 24/7. He said, I'm so sorry. I'm going to go myself. I'm coming to your house, and I'm going to fix the flat for you. He told me he came to the house. The Hatzalah guy was so busy dispatching, making all kind of calls. He never even got a chance to speak to him. But the son thanked the Conve Room guy, wanted to give him a gift. Conve Room guys don't take gifts. Fine. You will not believe this. Motzei Shabbos, the first night of Yontif, they're all sitting around the table. Children, grandchildren, grandparents. All of a sudden, in the middle of the meal, the mother-in-law of this fellow, Conve Room, she plops back in her chair. Her eyes are going through her head. And people yell, she's having a stroke. She's having a stroke. Every second counts. Get Hatzalah. And they call Hatzalah. And who do you think shows up? That guy who they fixed the flat. Could you imagine? This guy saved his mother-in-law's life. And most of the time, that's a good thing. My wife can't stand when I say that, but she's not here today, so I can say it. But anyway, that's the truth. That's the truth. He mamish saved his mother-in-law's life because this guy from Hatzalah was right there, not far from where he was, and they rushed her to the hospital. It's just amazing. And we all know, you should never know personally, of course, that by a stroke victim, every second counts. And here's one more story of Hatzalah. You could go crazy from this. In Yerushalayim, there's a wonderful yeshiva. Rabbi Shmelki Brazil has the yeshiva, and he told me that he had a Talmud who became a traveling salesman, and he was in the car many, many hours during the day. And he was in America, this fellow, and he didn't want to listen to all the radio shows, the Narishgate, the sports shows, and the political shows. It's all the same every day. So he decided he's only going to listen to Torah tapes. Only going to listen to Yiddish things. Now, this guy spoke Yiddish, and he had heard about the Kloisenberger Rebbe, so he decided that he had never heard shiurim about the Kloisenberger from the Kloisenberger Rebbe, but he knew that he was an Adam Gadol, one of the Gedolei Hadar. So he got a whole bunch of CDs of the Kloisenberger Rebbe, and every day, the second he got into the car, he put in the CD. One day he's driving, and all of a sudden he hears a loud horn behind him. And he wakes up, he realized, he fell asleep at the wheel. That horn woke him up. He's about to go into a car that stopped at a red light. He was going to get into an accident. He slammed on the brakes, and Baruch Hashem, he didn't hit the car. Now, of course, if you're at a red light, you don't look to see if somebody's going to bang into you. So that guy just left. The guy who was at the red light left when it turned green. But he was shaking. He wanted to see who blew the horn. How did anybody know that he fell asleep? He looks in the back, no car. Looks to the right, no car. Looks to the left, no. Who blew a horn? And then he realizes, he presses rewind on the CD. And he realizes that 35 years ago in Union City, New Jersey, when the Kloisenberger Rebbe was giving a shiur, the window was open. And a guy just happened to drive by and blew his horn for whatever reason. And the Eibishter waited 35 years because Hashem knew that one day this guy, Vishinantam Levanecha, instead of Narishgate, I'm going to save him from an accident. Could you imagine? Who would, you hear a horn, we hear a horn 1,000 times a day, right? We don't make anything of it. But that Ashkocha, because he was careful not to waste his time in the car, but Vishinantam Levanecha, that's what saved him. And when we hear stories, endless stories like this, and we tell them to each other, we see that Hashem is there every second. Everything that happens for a reason. For whatever reason that our talk couldn't be at 12 o'clock, it had to be at 2 o'clock. For whatever reason. One day we'll figure it out. Maybe there was some lady who couldn't make it at 12 o'clock, and she had to be here for 2 o'clock. Who knows? Whatever the reason is. But there's a reason for every little thing that happens. And when we understand that, then we can feel a contentment and closeness to Hashem because we know that He's guiding us every second. Now, I want to ask you a question that I am sure nobody ever asked you before. And if you call out the answer, whatever the answer is, because there's 100 answers to this question, and if I like it, I'm going to put it down and you'll be in my next speech. So let me ask you this question. Think about it for a moment, and then I'll tell you my answer. What is your favorite bracha to make? Okay, that's your favorite? Okay. Shehako, one lady once told me, Shasani Kitsainai. I love that. Another lady once told me, Lahadak Neshel Shabbos. Another one, Yasani Goy. Other people told me, Oyev Amo Yisrael. My favorite bracha until I prepared this talk was to make the bracha here in Yerushalayim on Sukkot night, Leishev Basukah, sitting with your family and saying Shechianu. I cannot say those two brachas without crying. How lucky people are to be in Yerushalayim with family on Sukkot, which is the greatest simcha of all. To be here the few days before Sukkot, you know what's going on in Mei Yesharim, and it's fabulous. Nothing like it in the world. But you know what I think, and many women called it out? It should really be Ashiyotzar. Now I want to tell you something. There's a pasuk, and the pasuk is in all places, in Eicha Gimel pasuk Lamates. It tells us, Mayis Oinein Adam Choy. How could a person who's living complain? Gever al Chatov. Can anybody say that we are rulers over our Chatoim? That's a pasuk in Eicha Gimel pasuk Lamates. All of us, none of us are perfect. Hashem could find a reason. Eicha Gimel pasuk Lamates. Hashem could find a reason to do something that would be harmful to us because none of us are perfect. We've all done things. So, but if we're alive, we should be so happy. How can we be happy every day that we're alive? How are you supposed to think about that? In my humble opinion, it's by saying Ashiyotzar. And what I want to tell you is from now on, from today on, let's make a Kabbalah, Bli Neder, from now on. Every time you come out of the facilities and you say Ashiyotzar, stand in one place. You know, when I told this to somebody, you know what he said? He put up a sign outside his bathroom. Ashiyotzar is not Tfilas Haderech. Right? It's hysterical. Because when people are saying Ashiyotzar, what are they doing? They're getting into the car, they're getting dressed, they're making the coffee, they're diapering the baby, right? They're texting or wherever. They're doing 100 different things. But Ashiyotzar talks about life. I'll tell you something so amazing that Rabbi Tats said. Rabbi Akiva Tats is a genius. He said something so interesting. We know that the word, how do you say skin in Hebrew? Does anybody know how to say or? Ayin Vav Resh. What other word can you make with those letters? Ayin Vav Resh. Iver, which means blind. Why should everything in Lashon Kodesh has a reason why it's called that? Like in English, a spleen could have been a colon could have been a kidney could have been a heart. You know, like what makes it that? But in Hebrew, it's not like that. And you know what he said? Something so genius. Or the skin blinds you to what is going on in your body. If we would see what's going on, the digestive system, the respiratory system, the whole orchestra, we'd go crazy. Every time I go to a doctor, I take a look at, that's the eye chart, that's in my head, that's going on in my ear and my nose. And I want to tell you something. I happened to mention this yesterday in Medrash Shmuel by Rabbi Yamin Moskowitz, and in the yeshiva. And Rabbi Tatz's son was sitting there. I had no idea that he's there. He comes over to me, he said, you know, there's something that my father added to that. I said, what is that? You could go crazy. He said, in English, skin, there's another word for skin. What is it? Hide. Isn't that amazing? Skin is hide. You could go crazy from that, right? So or and iver, or is blocking us from seeing what's going on. And the skin is hiding. What's going on? It's amazing. That's what geniuses are all about. I'm telling you. So I want to tell you something great. A couple years ago, my dear son-in-law, who's also, my son-in-law who's a genius in CD-ROMs. If you go online, you'll see Kol Ram Multimedia, the stuff that he's done. And we've done a lot of stuff together. We did something called Designer Perfect. You could probably see it. Go on, Designer Perfect, the miraculous workings of the human body. It's just fabulous. We interviewed from doctors about the skin and about the ear and the head and the eyes and the colon, the stomach, the heart, everything. Fabulous. So I began realizing when I was doing this project that in the Hebrew language, every body part has a double and a triple meaning. It doesn't have in English, but watch this. How do you say liver in Hebrew? What's the heaviest organ in the human body? The liver, kaved, it's heavy. Now, ayin, your eye, is a mayon. It's wet. It's always lubricated. But if somebody doesn't have eyes that are lubricated, then they have to get what's called false tears. Oizen comes from the word maznayim, a balance scale, the inner cochlea. If that's out of sync, a person loses his balance. And each one of these, like, listen to this about teeth. Why are teeth called shinayim? So one dentist says, because we get 2 sets, right? Now, some of us have 3 sets, but that's not natural, right? Okay. But, and you know what? What does the word shinui mean? Shinui means change. Shane is shinu. What changes the composure of food so we could swallow it? That's the teeth. And then Dr. Leibovich from Los Angeles told me an amazing thing. The Gemara says, Piv v'liboy shavin. Your mouth and your heart have to be the same. In other words, when you say something, you really have to believe it. Otherwise, don't say it. You can't be echad b'pev, echad b'leiv. How many teeth do we have? 32. How much is leiv equal? 32. Do you know that those people that have gum problems eventually have cardiac problems? Piv v'liboy shavin. You could go crazy from that. The Gemara says your mouth and your mouth and your heart have to be the same. So here's the cardiac problems. Leiv is 32. There's 32 teeth. But here's my favorite. I asked my Rebbe, Rabbi David Cohen, what about dam and damim, money and blood? He said they both circulate. And then he said it's hard to get people to donate either one of them. But if somebody has a real teretz, let me know. So what we should do today, really, is from now on, every time we say Ashiyatza, and you know something? I've been saying this in so many places, and a lady called me up, and she said, Rabbi Krohn, you're right. I said, how do you know I'm right? She said, don't we say Efsha lamoid lefanecha? Lamoid. To stand in one place. That's amazing, right? I told her, you didn't even learn in Brisk, and you knew that. That's amazing. And lamoid means to stand. So that's amazing. And you know something? You would not believe what the Vilna Gaon brings out in the Siddur Hagra. He says this is the only bracha that we mention, Kisei Kavaydecha. Kisei Kavaydecha, the highest place of Kedusha. We don't say it by Shofar, we don't say it by Matzah, we don't say it by Kriyas HaTorah, nothing. Only by this? It's almost embarrassing to talk about this topic. And you know what the Goyen writes, or they write it from him, that this is showing us afilu misham, even from the Kisei HaKavod, hu mashgiach al dvorim shvelim ke'ela, that Hashem takes care of such mundane things. So we've got to make this Kabbalah bli neder. So a guy calls me up a couple of weeks ago and he says, Rabbi Krohn, I was listening to your drasha, and every time I come out of the bathroom, I think of you. What a compliment. That's worth it. Right? But the point is, it really is something. It's a way of saying thank you to Hashem. It's a way of being grateful that we're alive. Now I want to tell you something. This is very special to me. Tonight's my birthday. Tu B'Shvat. Thank you. Now, I just want to tell you what somebody told me on my birthday last year. And the truth is, it really is appropriate for every single one of you. But the person who told it to me, I was so inspired and so elevated. And the person said, you know, on your birthday, many years ago, the day you were born, that's the day that Hashem decided the world can no longer exist without you. That's beautiful. And you know something? That's you too, and you too. And you too. The day you were born, Hashem decided the world cannot exist without you. To me, that is so invigorating and so inspiring. You know why? Because every one of us, Hashem made that decision that the world needs us. I don't have to be like you. You don't have to be like me. And both of us don't have to be like her. Everybody's different. Look at this photographer here. Do we have his talents? No. But he's there for a reason. You know how many schusim this tzaddik has? Because of him, thousands and thousands of people are not only going to see this lecture, but they see other lectures. So we're not like him, but he's not like us. But look what he's doing. It's not just I'm a photographer. He's bringing Torah to the world, to thousands. And every one of us has different talents. And every one of us can make a difference in the world. And when we were born, that was the day that Hashem said that the world can't exist without you. So I'll tell you, all of you certainly heard of Rebbetzin Youngreis, Allah Shalom. She passed away just a year and a half ago. And she told a story that's so amazing. She was very, very close to her husband, Rabbi Shalom. But he died many, many years ago. Many years ago. And she wrote and she told people, she said that she was so close to him that when he died, she couldn't even open his notebooks. She couldn't even open his Sforim because it had his handwriting in it. And it just pained her because he had a very exquisite type of handwriting. And it just reminded her of him. And one night, her daughter found an index card. And she said, Ma, please read this. And the Rebbetzin said that after she read it, she realized that her husband probably left that card for her to see so she could go on with life. Listen to what it said on that card. A long life is not good enough, but a good life is long enough. And that's an amazing thing to remember. A long life is not good enough, but a good life is long enough. And how do we make ourselves have a good life? I'll tell you a story. Many of you know that I go to Europe every year. We go to different places where tzaddikim lived. And when we go to Warsaw in Poland, and we go to the cave of the Sfas Emes, I always tell people, the Sfas Emes, the second Ger Rebbe, lived to be only 58 years old. And when he died, so his son, the Imre Emes, who would be the third Ger Rebbe, he said to a brother, at least our father had Arichas Yomim. So the brother said, Arichas Yomim, he didn't have longevity, he only lived 58. He said, I didn't say that he had Arichas Shonim, length of years. I said he had Arichas Yomim, length of days. Nobody can guarantee for anybody, for themselves. No Rav, no doctor, nobody can guarantee Arichas Shonim. Nobody knows what tomorrow brings. But every one of us can guarantee Arichas Yomim. Length of days. You know how you guarantee Arichas Yomim? Make every day count. And when you make every day count, you feel good about yourself. You go to sleep with a relaxed heart and a relaxed mind. Hashem, I didn't waste this day. I did something. And the Chavetz Chaim tells us, I'll tell you what to do, the Chavetz Chaim says. And he writes it in a Sefer Avas Chesed. And he writes like this. Avas Chesed, Perik Yud Beis. Oid. A person has to be so careful. From today on, we're going to make a second Kabbalah. Not only Ashiyatza, but every day we're going to do a chesed for somebody else. Now, I'm not saying a husband for a wife for a husband. That you got to do if you know it's good for you. But I'm talking out of the house. So some people say, oh, charity begins at home. Yeah, but you don't become a Baal Chesed because you're nice to your kids. Right? Let's face it. When you do something for somebody else, that's how you become a special person. And every day you're supposed to learn something. And if you want to be a happy person and you'll be able to close your eyes at night and say, I didn't live only for myself. Rabbi Chaim Volozhin used to tell his son, Loi la'atzmai nivra. You were not created for yourself. Every one of you here has a certain talent. Everybody has a certain talent. Take that talent. Hashem didn't give it to you to become rich and famous. Hashem gave you that talent to help other people. So let me just tell you 2 or 3 wonderful stories about chesed, and then we'll close with a beautiful idea. Let me tell you what it means to do a chesed. There's a lady, Mrs. Rita Slamwitz. She's in her 80s. She lives in Washington Heights, and she told me this story. There was a woman in Washington Heights who was 90 years old. Her husband passed away. He was also 90. Nebuch, they had no children. And this man, her husband, he was the youngest of his siblings. So he was the last one alive of his family. So she was the only one sitting Shiva. She was his wife, but there were no kids and no brothers and sisters. So a few of the older ladies from Washington Heights who knew her came to be Menachem Avel. All of a sudden, a middle-aged couple from Borough Park came in. Nobody knew who they were. And they began asking questions about the husband, what he did, where he lived. Finally, the new almana said, "Excuse me, did you know my husband?" I said, "No." She said, I just want to ask you something, if you don't mind. I don't know you, and you don't know me. And both of you didn't know my husband. I'm like, what are you doing here? Listen to what they said. You could faint. They said, we live in Borough Park, and we get the Hamodia. And in the Hamodia, Misaskim has a list of all those people sitting Shiva. And if we see anybody that's sitting Shiva alone, we go to be Menachem Avel. It takes your breath away. Who would think of that? What an unbelievable chesed. They don't even know the people. But if somebody's sitting alone, they're going to make a difference. That's unbelievable. When you do a chesed like that, you could go to sleep comfortably. I'll tell you another thing so beautiful. Rabbi Gifter, the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz, was traveling a number of years ago with his wife. They were traveling on a plane from LaGuardia to Cleveland. It was very late at night, and there was a bacher from the yeshiva that was trying to get on the flight, and finally he was the last one. He got on standby. He was able to get on. On the flight, in those years, they used to serve meals, if you remember. So, right, today, you got to pay for a snack. Well, in those days, you got a meal. So all of a sudden, the stewardess brings him a meal. So he says to the stewardess, I appreciate it so much, but I don't really deserve this. I didn't make a reservation for a kosher meal, and I was the last one on, so, it's not really mine. She said, I know, but the rabbi told us that we should give you his meal. He couldn't believe it. Rabbi Gifter is telling the stewardess that give him the meal. He goes over to the Rosh Yeshiva. He says, Rosh Yeshiva, I just want to thank you so much. But why did you give me your meal? He says, Junger man, I'm traveling with my Rebbitzin. We're going to come home late tonight. But no matter how late we come home, she's going to make me supper. But by the time you get back to the dormitory, they'll have served supper hours ago. You're not going to go with supper tonight. I wanted to be sure you have supper. That's a Rebbe. That's a Rosh Yeshiva. That's amazing. That's amazing. So I just want to tell you one more thing. And, we could go on forever. But I am speaking tonight on a different topic, totally. So you're welcome to come there if you can make it. I don't know where. Erez, where am I speaking tonight? Rehov Neter. Where is that?
I think that's Ramat Eshkol.
Yeah, it's Ramat Eshkol. Okay, Rehov Neter. Right, and I'm going to start, I must start at 9 o'clock, because I have a plane tonight. 9 o'clock, right? Okay, Erez says yes, and that means maybe. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you just one more story. I know you're not going to believe this, but it's just amazing. Most of you know that I'm a Moel, and I had a bris in Monsey right after Paysach, and I stayed in the most wonderful Rav's house, Rabbi Chesser. I don't know if any of you know him. You know Rabbi Chesser? Okay. So a wonderful, wonderful family. He became Rav there 2 years ago. A Talmud Chacham, a wonderful, kind person, whatever. And with, when I came into the shul Friday night, so I didn't know where to sit. So I'm walking around, and a guy says, wait, there's a place for you. I said, there is? He said, yeah, right up front, there's a table for guests. So I thought, wow, that's such a nice thing. You would think a table for guests, would be someplace in the back. But it was right behind the Baal Tefillah. Okay, yeah, I sit down. There's a chumash and a siddur, for anything that you would want Friday night. I'm about to begin to daven, and a guy brings me a shtender. I said, excuse me, sir, it's so nice of you to have brought me, gave me the seat, but you have to give me your shtender. He said, no, it's not my shtender, it's yours. I said, mine? He said, yeah, take a look what it says on it. You wouldn't believe it. It says, our guest. Could you believe that? Why shouldn't every shul in the world have that? Every shul in the world should have. So now I'm going to tell you one more great story, which I see already that you know. But that Shabbos, Kenai Nahara, the Chesser family, they have 8 sons. And I never, ever in my life heard Semiras like that. I really thought that I was in the Beis HaMikdash. The harmony of those 8 boys together with the father, not only the Shalom Aleichem, the Askinus Udos, the Rabbi Chesser, and the Kol Makadesh, it was heavenly, even Havdalah. It was beyond. Now, there's only one family that I ever heard sing like that. And that's my daughter and son-in-law. The Kramers, they live in Baltimore. They both have great voices. They have 5 children. One has a better voice than the other. And the harmonies. And I never saw, except for the Chessers, I never saw any family like that sings like that, except my daughter and son-in-law, the Kramers. And we were so impressed with that family that Motzei Shabbos, my wife goes over to Mrs. Chesser and says, you know, I have a granddaughter in Baltimore, and you have a son. And, you know, I was wondering, maybe we can make something here. She says, well, he just got back from Eretz Yisrael. He didn't start going out yet. She said, okay, let's keep it in mind. A few weeks ago, Rabbi Chesser had to come to Shevach High School. My wife is the Hebrew principal there. And he had to speak to Rebbetzin Hertz, who's the principal. And my wife recognizes Rabbi Chesser, and she goes over to him, and she says, oh, Rabbi Chesser, Shalom Aleichem, you remember me? He says, yeah, you're Rebbetzin Krohn, right? Right, you were at the house. She said, what's your son? Oh, he's starting to go out now. Oh, that's great. My wife comes home, you got to call his Rosh Hashiva right now. I called the Rosh Hashiva. We got an okay, and they just got engaged. So we should all have simchas. Could you imagine my wife was a shadchan for her granddaughter? It's like unbelievable, right? Okay, but anyway, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you for listening. You should always be happy.